Hi everyone, Wowthany Weird, Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Cool Kids album, Before Shit Got Weird. This is a brand new LP from the original internet rap duo, the Cool Kids. Chuck English and Sir Michael Rocks are back. It has been years since these two caught a cross-cultural buzz online in the mid to late 2000s. When I think about that time, it really does feel like forever ago because the paradigm the Cool Kids came up in was so different back then. The way we consume music online, the overall cultural relevancy of hip-hop, the audiences it appealed to. We're talking about a duo here whose first mixtape was presented by Napster. These guys recorded stuff with Travis Barker while every emo rapper you could name was still learning their times tables. And your favorite Alchemist collaborator, Boldy James, is the cousin of Chuck English. They have tracks together that are over a decade old at this point. The Cool Kids' popularity in the 2000s wasn't just by chance either. They had a standout sound, which brought these bassy bangers that fused together the rudimentary rhythmic fundamentals of 80s hip-hop with the modern eccentricities of artists like the Neptunes. Mike and Chuck's relaxed flows also brought a clash of old and new as well on tracks such as 88 or Gold in a Pager. The duo rode this sound right up until their 2011 debut when Fish Ride Bicycles, a record that unfortunately did not really meet the expectations and quality standards that the Cool Kids had set up until that point. And following that, they did kind of fall off the radar as a duo for a little bit. Maybe for a combination of reasons, be it the wrong time or the pressure of making Fish Ride Bicycles and the fact that it didn't really hit, or navigating an industry that was still very much shrugging its shoulders at left field online hip-hop acts or still struggling to learn how to work with them. Think of the very public label troubles that Death Grips was having around this time, or Odd Future being the most controversial thing under the sun, while still struggling to get traditional hip-hop publications and blogs to take them seriously. The Cool Kids would eventually return in 2017 in a big way with the release of Special Edition Grandmaster Deluxe, which in terms of runtime and material was a lot to go through, but I did appreciate the record going all out in a way that Fish Ride Bicycles just didn't. The production and features on this thing expanded on the Cool Kids sound massively, far beyond a lot of the throwback beats they blew up on. But the rap landscape had evolved so much over the last 6 years, it was kind of difficult to see or hear what exactly made the duo stand out in the first place. Which brings us to Before Shit Got Weird, which is a title that very much acknowledges the position the duo is in right now. Not just in terms of the pandemic, but nowadays weird is the new normal. So as a result, the Cool Kids have no option other than to evolve or be victims of just sounding regular in the current music landscape. And I think they make a fair attempt of doing that here, while also throwing it back a little bit to some of the sounds and vibes that made them pop off to begin with. Some of the tracks here do bring back some of Chuck English's trademark rugged booming beats that strike that perfect balance between being lush and melodic but also skeletal, not too busy. Scam Likely, for example, which also hits with all these funny, clever narrative bars about being scammed, tricked, deceived. The production on Strictly Business is like the soundtrack to an old school house party, with bars upon bars about chilling out, relaxing, taking a break, taking a breather because you're making so many mistakes and fuck-ups due to being overwhelmed and just erratic. It's Yours Part 2, killer single, features all these reverse drums and mystical arpeggios. Mikey's chorus on this one is one of the best the duo has done in years. Meanwhile, Hibachi sports these trunk-knocking grooves straight out of the 1980s, laced with all these psychedelic and delayed synth passages, which is kind of the other part of this LP that makes it stand out in the Cool Kids discography. It is weirdly psychedelic and surreal at many points, a vibe that is slightly enhanced by the skits and transitional moments that bring us from track to track. In a recent interview I had with the Cool Kids, Chuck English likened his process with sculpting this project to that of making a movie, and I can definitely feel that intention through the way much of this project progresses. However, that's also a point of contention I have with this record too, because while it does have a lot of colorful segues and thematic connections here and there, across the project there isn't a whole lot of focus or linear direction. If we pull back and look at this album as a whole, the macro picture is a little messy. I think even some of the skits here could have used retooling, like Showtime, for example, which has a lot of things compounding at once. A movie trailer going in a movie theater, walking into the theater, being on the phone at the same time, making noise, being interruptive, having all these like little short interactions from the people surrounding you in the area. There's a lot of weird bits and sound effects effects peppered throughout the skit, but it doesn't really reach a conclusion or punchline of any sort. Cells and Scales, by comparison, has a long-winded intro, but is a lot funnier by comparison, especially with how it ends. But the fact that this track is back-to-back with the interlude Tony Two Sweaters just kind of further interrupts what little flow this record already has going for it. With 21 tracks on this entire thing, there must have been a better place to put this. So Before Shit Got Weird is definitely not a trim album, but I suppose it's not the worst problem to have, cause much of the time on this project, it sounds like Chuck and Mike are just going wherever their artistic whims take them, which results in a lot of weird and colorful ear candy. There's the intro track In the Mix, which has all these trippy trap beats, laced with synthesizers that make me feel like I am sitting with Mike and Chuck as we're moving through a luxurious acid trip. There's also the theatrical pickup on line 6 that has all of these eerie soap opera organs and heavy beats that feel like something that MF Doom and Madlib would have put together back in the day. On I'm Coming Over There, the heavy, clunky rhythms here pair really well with the post-industrial synthesizers and Mike, Chuck's, and Guap Dad's whisper raps. And Low Sodium is a passionate, melodic, anthemic cut that is really enveloping, just beautifully lush, some of Chuck's most harmonious production ever, with verse after verse about salt and keeping it low in your attitude or your diet. Left a 1-star review because they left out the onions is just one of many standout bars on this one that are clever, funny, and just kind of get to the point of the track's concept really well. But by that same token, there are a lot of tracks here that are so awash in effects or feature supremely low-key, supremely disconnected performances, which just prevent the hooks and the verses from popping as hard as they maybe should. Dapper Dan Leather, for example, G-Dot's feature here, enters the fold pretty unceremoniously. Not to mention the mix on Mike's verse on the back end is a little muddy in comparison with everything else on the track and the record in general. The chorus on Horizon Island is no doubt colorful with all of these layers of overdubs and synths and sound effects, but they don't really come together in a way that is all that clean. So the hook just sounds really mushy. The comatose Larry June feature on this LP as well is maybe just a bit too laid back, putting me in sleepy mode. And Ridin' Clean, while sonically it does sound like a very authentic piece of classic southern hip hop with the steady beats, the slow-mo pianos, even the pitched vocals, the Cool Kids really failed to put a spin on it stylistically as they do with nearly everything else on this record. Not to mention that Light Work doesn't really go off in the way that I hoped it would, given it has some of the biggest and best features on the entire LP. Black and Jid, both of whose performances here are solid, but again, given the name recognition, I was more hoping for fireworks on this one. The record moves into a relatively strong finish with Low Sodium that I mentioned earlier. That one's great. Triumph Part 2 is a massive banger, much in the same way that It's Yours Part 2 was. Then Warm Handshakes stuck out to me for a number of reasons. I mean, the production is super colorful, really gummy, really fun. The opening flows from Mike kind of calls back to that classic Clips track, Mr. Me Too. While this song doesn't really tie up the whole record thematically, how could it with it being so all over the place, it does make sure the album finishes off as zany and as out there and as fun as it started. Overall, I think this LP is the best full-length album the Cool Kids have put out so far, which maybe in a breath does seem odd because this is not maybe the most positive review that this album could ever get, but it's still a very good project and sees the duo bringing a level of energy and creativity that I wished was there on When Fish Ride Bicycles like 10 years ago. Yeah, the track list is a little bloated, but there are still lots of colorful and creative highlights on this thing. And if projects like this continue to come out, I can only hope that Chuck and Mike don't continue to be as underappreciated as historically they have been. Feeling a light to decent 7 on this one. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, the Cool Kids, forever.